Welcome to the What You Need to H2Know podcast, where we feature the people, places, and projects shaping Ontario's water community. I'm Michelle Grenier, the Executive Director of the Ontario Waterworks Association. Throughout February, we're sharing a special mini-series called Flowing into Leadership. In these short episodes, we're introducing you to the candidates running for election to the OWWA Board of Directors. Each conversation offers a brief look at their background, what motivates them in the water sector, and how they see the role of the board in supporting OWWA's members and advancing the industry. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Matthew Coleman, who's standing for election to the OWWA Board of Directors this year. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and so I think right off the out of the gate here, I'd like to give our listeners a chance to get to know you a little bit more. So can you tell us about your day job and maybe a little bit about what you do for fun when you're not at work? And then if you can share a little bit about your involvement with OWWA so far.
Yeah, so I'm a senior project manager slash engineer at Toronto Water. I work in this really fun group at Toronto Water called the Field Innovation Team. And everyone asks, like, what does that actually mean? Which is a good question, which we're trying to figure out. But effectively, it's kind of searching the globe for new and innovative technologies and trying to, pilot those or trial those and then eventually bring those in to Toronto Water if we see that there's value there. So it's a lot of fun to be able to kind of see what's out there, work with vendors or other technology providers that feel as if they can provide value to us, and then try to move those through and then operationalize some of those things that we think are going to provide value. So it's a lot of fun being part of Toronto Water and the Field Innovation Team. I get to see a whole bunch. I've been involved with OWWA, I want to say since 2017-ish, give or take. I joined the distribution committee, and then helped out with that for a long time, just as a regular distribution committee member, and helped out with writing papers, giving presentations, putting together workshops, and eventually I had moved into the chair position of the distribution committee, and I'm currently the chair. I think the term comes to an end in May. And I've had really loved it. It's been amazing, been an amazing experience for me for a number of reasons that we can get into. But after my chair position, I had thought to myself, how else can I be involved and how else can I contribute to OWWA? And I felt I looked at the board and kind of spoken with some of the board members to understand what was involved and the impact they had, and thought this would be a good fit for me, where I'm at in my career or not in my personal life. I think I have the capacity and the ability to really be a valuable member of the board. So that's why I put my name forward to be a candidate, and so we'll see how it all shakes down in the end. But yeah, looking forward to going through the process. I guess a little bit about me personally. Born and raised in Toronto, but I've been fortunate enough to travel the world. And I've lived in kind of 6 or 7 different countries throughout my life. Currently, I'm a full-time dad to a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. So anybody who's got young kids, you'll appreciate how busy life is at home. But it's tremendously rewarding and a lot of fun, as everyone knows who has gone through that. Outside of that, I'm a big runner, and I've done a bunch of triathlons. I'm trying to keep that up with the young kids is a challenge, but doing a lot of running. I signed up for a half marathon in the spring, and I'll be doing a full marathon in the fall. So that's kind of I would describe it as my like the equivalent of yoga or mindfulness, just the ability to get out on the road by myself and be alone with my thoughts while getting a little exercise in. I find that tremendously valuable, and I enjoy that. Yeah, so that's a bit about me and where I've come from and what I do.
Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And we'll have to unpack our triathlon passions on another podcast another day. But
Separate podcast.
Separate podcast. So looking back at the younger version of you again, what drew you to the water sector originally, and what's kept you engaged over time?
Yeah, I was really fortunate in that by the time I was kind of 10 or 12, I wanted to be an engineer. Prior to that, I was like hockey player, baseball player, but I've got a little dossier at home that my mother made me fill out every year. And by the time I was around 10, I had written in that, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it was engineer. So I was one of the fortunate ones that kind of knew what I generally wanted to be and then pursued that, got an engineering degree. And then after I had graduated, decided to see the world and backpacked around kind of Europe, Southeast Asia, and Australia, New Zealand. And then I was dirt poor and decided I should probably get a job. And I kind of fell into the industry like a lot of people did. When I was telling people that I was looking for work, a friend of mine from university says, "Hey, I'm part of this startup." For anybody in the pipeline industry, it's called Ecologics. And basically, the interview process is a little bit more than this, but I distill it down to they needed someone to move to London, England on Sunday, and it was like a Wednesday. They needed that person to be able to work outside in the field and have some technical knowledge. And I had a background in doing that. And most importantly, the ability to drive a manual transmission on the other side of the road. And I was like, that's fine, because I've worked out in the field. I love traveling. You want me to move to England on Sunday? No problem. And yeah, I can drive a manual transmission on the other side of the road. I've done that a bunch of times. So, you know, kind of, yeah, as I said, fell into it. And then, the more and more I worked in that industry, in this industry of ours, just kind of fell in love with it. There's some really great moments working all over the world, working for industries, working for private companies, working for utilities. With that original company that I worked for, Ecologics, I think I got to see 40 water authorities across kind of 4 continents and a bunch of different countries.
Wow.
Managed to do some volunteer work for Water for People in India, and that had a really big impact, seeing kind of what the impacts you can have on a small community. So yeah, just fell into it and then fell in love with it while I was here. And I think that's probably a common theme for a lot of people. Um, and just have this isn't my career, this is kind of my passion now. Yeah.
Yeah. I find it interesting. Everybody has a different story about how they ended up in water. Like I don't think anybody comes out of high school saying like, "Oh, I know exactly what I want to do." Um, but once you get here, you do get sucked in. Um, and I guess building on that, and obviously it means a lot to you, and now you have a role in providing safe drinking water, in your hometown. But can you tell our listeners a bit more about what aspects of working in the water sector you find most meaningful or motivating, and especially when that work is challenging?
Yeah. Working for a municipality can be challenging with the level of bureaucracy, and it can be frustrating. But I do stay motivated, and I think the two kind of big things, three things that really come to mind are one, I have friends that work for banks, and their comment to me is, I make wealthy people wealthier, and
Mm,
uh, not terribly motivating. Whereas, I get to be part of a group of of people that deliver safe drinking water. Like, I sleep really well at night. Um, but I've also had the opportunity in my career to work for places that don't have access to safe drinking water, or over time have just become complacent and their access to safe drinking water has diminished or have completely evaporated. So, for me, I'm motivated by one, uh, the opportunities and challenges that are available in the water industry. Two, I'm motivated by the idea that we're standing on the shoulders of giants here. I'm at Toronto Water. The history is kind of 150, 60 years old. But there's still opportunities and there's still challenges out there that that we can rise to and help, I don't want to say solve water, but like improve water. Despite this being kind of a several thousand-year-old industry, I was in south of France recently taking photos of the Roman aqueducts, and here we are, so, 2,000 years later, kind of still offering the same services, but we're trying to optimize around that. It's really rewarding for me. I think of, I see a water fountain out in a park and people drinking from that. It provides me with a tremendous amount of joy to see that, hey, we're providing free drinking water. How cool is that? or like at a splash pad, my
Yeah.
son's playing the splash pad and like not even thinking twice about it. So, if you take a step back and say, that's effectively a free service that we're providing because we've managed to do it so well and so cheap. So that, those are the types of things that keep me going, is, knowing that we have a huge role to play, that we can't be complacent, but we're also providing kind of tremendous value to our customers, who are, the kind of the people that live in the city of Toronto.
Yeah. Definitely rewarding. Looking back on your career so far, what's one lesson or experience that has shaped how you approach leadership or decision making?
Yeah, I had the opportunity. I was kind of voluntold that I needed to work for the general manager of Toronto Water directly. I had been an engineer at Toronto Water, and they said, "Can you go? There's someone who's leaving. Can you go fill in this post for 9 months?" I said, "Okay," and then it turned into 12, and then it turned into 18, and then the pandemic hit, and that turned into 24. So I think I ended up working a little over 2 years for the general manager of Toronto Water. This gentleman by the name of Lou DiGeronimo. For those who haven't met Lou or don't know much about him, he's been at the general manager at Toronto Water for kind of over 15 years. He's well respected in the industry, and getting to work kind of side by side with him and seeing his perspective on things was, tremendously eye opening. I mean, he doesn't have an engineering background, but he knows the technical stuff. He engages with the counselors, and the public extremely well. He has a communication group that respect him a whole bunch. He deals with contractors very well. He deals with consultants very well. He can speak to cybersecurity. He can speak to IT, and so um, he's gonna think I'm sucking up to him if he ever hears this. But I don't work for him anymore, so it's not like he can give me a huge pay raise. But just seeing how someone can operate in those different spaces, and he gave me a perspective of what is involved in delivering this service. We all play our small roles at points in time, but to see someone who operates at a really high level across, the gamut of what is water, clean water, it really kind of opens up your eyes. I'm an engineer at heart, and I know my little subject matter expertise really, really well. But that experience opened up my eyes that, there's not just the technical aspect. There's communications. There's dealing with, how do we fund these things properly. You've got a consulting and contracting industry that support you very well. So how do you make sure that's healthy? So that was a tremendous experience, just getting to work for the general manager directly, and seeing the vastness of this industry. I think anybody who's worked in it for a while is like, you know what you know, and you also don't know what you don't know. And so that was kind of learning to know what I didn't know at that point in time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and our listeners should know that Lou signed your nomination form for this uh,
I had to
process.
bribe him with a bottle of bourbon, but
Oh, I was going to say, I guess that shows that, he's a fan of yours too. Um, I guess thinking about leadership, if you could influence one area or aspect of the water sector over the course of your career, what would it be, and why is that important to you?
yeah, I look at the job that I'm in now wasn't by accident. Certainly circumstances opened up, but I kind of got into this technology and innovation group. Um, it kind of pulled me, and I worked towards it. And so that's something that I really enjoy. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for the water sector to start adopting some of the new technologies that are coming online. I think most people understand that we are a generally risk averse industry, and there's a reason for that. It's not something that you want to take too much risk. Clean drinking water is not something you want to take risk on. Um, but there is opportunity. The buzzword of the day is kind of AI, but what does that mean for the water industry? And I won't, I'm not a young person anymore. I realized that when I had some staff that were working for me show me stuff, and they're like, "Yeah, I did this in university." I was like, "I don't even know what that is." But I continuously learn, and this is, the data and technology and aspect is something that I think we as an industry can can really start looking towards over the next 15 to 20 years. And there'll be a lot of changes happening coming down the line. So, my perspective is, how do we as an industry carefully and reasonably start adopting some of these technologies that are becoming available? What's the roadmap for that? You don't just want to go ahead, right into something and find out that it's not providing value, or it's not operating as well as you'd hope. But I think that's, over the next 15, 20 years, that's going to be a major change in the water industry. And, that's something I'm going to be involved in no matter where I am. But I think there's a space for OWWA to be involved in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting when you think about, we have operators who started their careers with chart recorders.
Right.
And, now they're going to have, large models able to now analyze trends and stuff that we, a human can't probably capture over the space of 30 days or 365 days. And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of fascinating to think about how that might evolve. Carefully.
Yeah, I had a thought the other day where, I look at, I've got young kids, and I look at the tools that they have to learn and how they're learning at school, and, very different from how I learned at school. And so they're gonna come out, when they're looking for careers, just kind of in a different position than we were. So what are the tools that we need to build so that, the people that are coming into the water industry are going to be able to be like really efficient, to utilize the skills that they've developed. It would, imagine coming in the water industry and being told, hey, you have to use a slide ruler to do your math, or an abacus. Like, that would be insane, right?
Yeah.
So, but there was a point in time where people did that, right? Then they invented calculators, and we learned how to use calculators. And then, Excel came out, and we learned how to use Excel spreadsheets, and so on and so forth. So what are the tools we need to build for the next generation so that they can be efficient? So, maybe I'm not going to be a power user of the things that I build, but, the next generation, I should say, is going to be, really, really appreciative of that we've built those and are able to, subdue some amazing things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thinking about that with that forward-looking lens, from your perspective as a member, where do you think OWWA can have the greatest impact for the sector over the next few years?
Yeah, the OWWA, like, it's a great machine. It runs really, really well. I mean, my experience is it's done really well socializing its expertise. This the expertise in the water industry in Ontario. And, leveraging, as part of the distribution committee, I've seen that. I've seen people bring different aspects to it. So really, I think it's continuing down that path of, how do we keep socializing that expertise, and connecting the people that, have a need and have a, supply of information or resources or services, making those connections. So, as we become more and more global, more and more online, it's a matter, it's no longer like, oh, I know a guy who can kind of do this for us. It's like, there's professionals that do this. Let's connect them. Let's solve your problem. And so OWWA does a great job of doing that. And so I think that's something that we can't be complacent about. We got to keep doing really, really well. But I also think it's a really good forum, and again, nothing new here, really good forum for, industry experts to help steer legislation and regulation. And I think that's, something that we can kind of strengthen a little bit more. Like, how do we, we have the opportunity at OWWA to sit back and not be in the weeds on running a utility or running a consultancy business or running a contractor business. We have the opportunity to step back and say, as an industry, what is good for us as a whole, and then move in that direction where, I work for a utility, I have my utility lens on, whereas at the OWWA level, you can kind of take those lenses off and say, what is good for us as an industry as a whole. And so that kind of forum, that is really, really valuable. It's not terribly specific, but I think that's kind of generally what we should be doing is, keep those connections, keep socializing the collective knowledge that we've got in Ontario, but also steering the industry in the right direction, making sure that, we're addressing the opportunities and challenges going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think you hit the nail on the head there. So imagining yourself as part of the board, how do you see the role of an OWWA board member, and how would you approach that responsibility if elected?
Yeah, it kind of builds on my previous answer. I think the role of a board member is you kind of set the direction of OWWA. We have any organization is limited by the resources they have, so you need to have focus. And as a board, your one of your jobs is to make sure that we're focused on the right things. So that's finding the opportunities and challenges within the water sector in Ontario, and understanding like what is OWWA can we have an impact on, and then focusing those resources on that. So that's putting the people, the programs in place to meet those opportunities or those challenges. So I think as a board is your two major goals are like looking at, the opportunities and challenges of the next 5, 10, 15 years, and then coming up with a meaningful strategy and tactics and to be able to meet those. It's you don't want to get distracted with something new and shiny, or else you never really make any progress. So I think that's, as part of the board, you have the opportunity not to get into the weeds, but to make sure the ship's heading in the right direction. But the other part is listening to our members and hearing what they think are the opportunities and challenges. Or it's not just going to come from people in a boardroom with the doors locked. It's going to come from the members. And then as part of that, as that relationship between the board and its members, is we need to communicate our plan and how we're progressing, to make sure that, we're being honest with ourselves, and making sure that we are making the progress and meeting the demands of our members. Yeah. So I think that's kind of generally, and we can get into the specifics of what opportunities and challenges. We've touched on those a little bit, with the IT stuff and the technology stuff and data stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's a great point of view. And I think in the interest of time, I'm gonna move to my last question for you. And it's, is there anything you'd like OWWA members to know about you or about why you're interested in serving on the board?
Yeah, I mean, I heard a great quote the other day. I can't remember who it was from, unfortunately, but it was, your career is divided into 3 phases: the learning aspect, the earning aspect, and then the returning aspect. And so, the learning aspect is you spend a portion of your career going to school and learning as much as you can. The earning aspect is where you go and make money, and then the returning aspect is that feedback to the industry that has helped you to earn that money. That's actually a common theme as well with the engineers, is kind of giving back, as well. And so I kind of look at it, this is the stage of my career, or at least entering it, where I'm returning some of the goodwill that was offered to me, by this industry. If I don't happen to be a successful candidate and what I'm not nominated to the board, that doesn't mean I'm going away. I'm going to be actively involved in the OWWA on the distribution committee, still be pumping out papers and presentations. I think this is a wonderful organization. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us. I think I can make a meaningful impact with my perspectives. Having worked around the world, having worked for a utility, I've also worked as a consultant and a service provider. And then also kind of my specific focus on data and technology. I think it's a good fit for me to work with the board and OWWA. So hopefully people feel the same way.
Well, yeah, on that note, I want to say thank you for everything that you do for OWWA currently, and hopefully you'll have several more opportunities to continue making this amazing contribution. And thank you, Matt, again, for taking the time to join us today and for your willingness to run in this election. I know it can be daunting, putting yourself out there. And but this is, we do aim to be a democratic association, and this is an important part of the democratic process.
Yeah,
So,
thanks, Michelle. Appreciate
yeah,
it.
it was great. So, to our listeners, I also want to thank you for tuning into this episode of Flowing into Leadership. We encourage you to learn more about all of the candidates and to take part in the upcoming board election. The polls will open on March 17th, and the successful candidates will be announced at our annual general meeting on May 4th. If you're not yet a member of OWWA but want to have a chance to support your preferred candidate, please check out the membership page on our website at owwa.ca. Thanks again to everyone here, and we'll see you next time.